Hi, and welcome back to the Digital Jobsite, where the boards are straight, the weather's great, and there really is a board stretcher. This video is for the day 3 of a Carpenter's Introduction to 3D Modeling. On day 1 video, or part 1, however you want to call it, we created a 2x4 and arranged them in this beam position or configuration. In day 2, we talked about groups and introduced components like these legs are built as components, and this in day 3 we're just going to get this simple set of sawhorses finished up with showing a few more techniques and a couple things to get used to and be aware of in the 3D modeling world. Alright, so let's get started on this, and something I'll tell you now, if you have previously or in the future watch any of my 3D or my digital blog site posts where we're doing complex models, roofs and stairs and that sort of thing, cabinets, you'll watch when I'm moving around the model. I'm not pivoting or orbiting by holding down the scroll wheel. I'm not zooming in and out with the scroll wheel, and I'm not panning by clicking the mouse button down and then moving, or the scroll wheel down and then moving the model around. And all those features are, you can do those up here. You can click this orbit tool or the pan tool or the zoom tool and scroll with the mouse, but it's simpler just to do those directly with the scroll wheel. But what I'm trying to say is that if you watch the other models that I do, the model moves around very smoothly, and I can actually draw a line and then pivot and zoom and rotate all at the same time. And the way I'm doing that is by using a 3D mouse controller for the 3D design work. If you do a lot of this stuff, it's a very, very handy tool to have. It's kind of like using a handsaw for cutting 2x4s versus getting a skill saw, or better yet, a miter box. But anyways, for the purpose of this introduction, I'm reverting to the standard mouse controls for pivot, orbit, and zoom, and handicapping myself by not using a 3D mouse. The 3D mouse also has programmable buttons which I've programmed for forward and back, so I don't have to go up. I don't necessarily have to go up to the back arrow key. I can just click a button on my 3D mouse controller. Just so you know, on those other videos I'm cheating. On this one I'm doing it just the way you will on your introduction to 3D modeling. So let's get going with this and position these legs, put some gussets on here, and put these sawhorses to use. With the wonder of, or the beauty of 3D modeling, I can create and delete things at will. There's no limits to what I can make or create or throw away. They're just bytes in cyberspace. They're not wood in a dumpster or trees from a dwindling forest resource. And to give a humorous or an entertaining demonstration of that, once I've made one component leg, if I select the move tool, hit control, and move this leg, let's move it 10 inches, enter, and then let's just go 100x, enter. So with a few clicks of the mouse, we take the zoom extends control, you can see that I created in that instant 100 more of those legs. And if the saying in the real world is, if you cut it once or cut it twice and it's still too short, in the 3D modeling world, if we happen to cut something short and at the wrong angle, we cut 100 of them wrong, it's no big deal. With the back arrow, I can fix all my mistakes. If I in fact did cut them too short, we can take the move tool, and in this case, because it's got an angled end, we can judiciously lengthen our boards, and presto, we've saved ourselves. We didn't ruin anything. If we decide we don't want 100 sawhorse legs, with the back arrow key we can fix them all, delete them all. No worse for the wear. So with that little bit of entertainment, I'll get serious here. We have a leg on the end of the sawhorse where we drew it just because it was easy. Let's move this leg in, let's say 6 inches from the end. I wanted to move it straight in, so I made sure that I'm moving it in the green direction. Type 6, enter. And let's go 4, enter instead. Okay, I'm just going to go back, move this green direction. Doesn't matter how far I move it. Once I type my desired distance, it'll snap to what I want. So, okay, so 4 inches. I'm going to go with 4 inches to make the sawhorse a little more stable. And now, something equally cool as the move and copy tool is the scale tool. So we want 4 legs in this sawhorse. I only have 1, and I can take a leg, select a leg, move tool, hit control, move a leg over, take the rotate tool, click down here, pivot the leg around 180 degrees, which it did not want to go on its own, so I type in 180, and then I can move this leg over, and then I can line it up and all this stuff to get that done, and then I can copy a leg over here and move it and all these sorts of things. But as you might suspect, there's a better way. So let's take this leg and not move it, but space bar out here, select the leg, and then I am going to move this leg. I'm going to select that. Let's see. Actually, I'm going to move this back out to the end of the sawhorse. In the real world, we would have screwed that leg on and we'd have to undo it or unnail it. But right now, just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to just move it back out to the end of the sawhorse and do this step first instead. We're going to take that leg, move tool, control key. I'm just going to move this point over to there. And now we have selected the leg that we moved. It's this one, not this one. They look pretty much the same, but we're going to carefully select the leg we moved. Now we'll take this little tool, left click on that. It's the scale tool. And the beauty of this thing is it'll create a mirror image of anything. Any geometry you select and scale, it will make a mirror image. And it does so by moving these handles on the box. It'll move it different configuration. But we basically just want to make a mirror image of this so we don't have to copy and rotate and realign the leg. So to do that, I'll take this little handle here. And I'm just going to pull it in this direction, and if you watch the value control box in the lower right hand corner, it says red scale, and it's moving it some dimension, some proportion. And if I fiddle around with it, I can get it to stop on -1, which is exactly what we want for a one-to-one mirror image of that leg. If by taking the back arrow and we do this scale thing and we can't get it to land on 1, just type 1, enter, actually -1, enter, and it'll make a mirror image of it. And so that will suffice. There's other interesting and useful features for that scale tool, but that's a good dramatization of it. And one of the things about using the scale tool in different applications, sometimes if you copy a component and then modify it, like if we wanted to put, let's see if I can get this to work. Okay, I'm going to put a little square box on here and pull this box out, and then just jump out of that component edit mode. You'll see that it put a leg, a block on the opposite side of that leg. They're both components that did the same thing to both. And sometimes, we'll just get rid of that box. Sometimes if you make a copy of a component and move it and don't make a mirror image of it, then in that instance it might put the block on the inside of this leg instead of the outside. So making a mirror image of it's very helpful. And all these features are accessible due to the fact that this is a component. And on day one, when we built the group for this beam at the top of the sawhorses, I showed some of the differences between, actually it was day two, I showed how to take one of these grouped objects and make it into a component so that we can have these behaviors to it. Now what I did was I'll do it again, just the left mouse button, and I hold down the shift key to select multiple items. So I have both of those legs, and now we're just going to slide both of those legs in the green direction 4 inches. 4, enter. And we need another set of legs on the other end of the horse. So while those are selected, I'm going to now hit the move tool, hit copy, and it'll move a set of those legs, a pair of them, down the other end of the horse. And it's in the green direction. I'm going to hold shift and put it to the end of the sawhorse. I did a sloppy job of selecting that. So we're just going to go down here, upper right, lower left, select 2 legs, move tool, copy. I'm going to make sure I grab a corner this time when I can see this end of the horse. Move this in the green direction. Now I'm going to hold down shift, and so no matter where my cursor goes, this pair of legs is only going to move in the green direction. We want it to stop at the end of that sawhorse, and you saw it index there with the little green dot. Now while those legs are still selected, I'm just going to move them back this way in the green direction, once again 4 inches. Okay, and so now we have all 4 legs absolutely identical to each other in position on the sawhorse, just where we want them. The last item we're going to make here is going to be a gusset to hold this together. I've seen this done with 2x4 blocks, but I like to use a sheet of 3/4 inch plywood. So let's make a piece of 3/4 inch plywood that fits here. Now here again, if we were going to try to draw a piece of 3/4, draw something on the end of the sawhorse here and kind of follow this around, and so we can make this group, or this this geometry that kind of looks like a gusset, but it didn't quite hit up here. I was going to use another method, but let's do this. I'm just going to get rid of that. What I did, I went back past where I want it to end up. I'm scrolling with the mouse over the object so it doesn't, so it gets traction on the zoom. Go forward 1 move. Okay, now we're going to create this gusset. And let's say we want to make the gusset 6 inches tall and then to fit underneath here. If we try to draw something 6 inches tall and we want it to be kind of on this line, it's going to be kind of tricky to get everything to fit where we want it. And there's ways of doing this, but I want to introduce guidelines here. It's kind of like using your pencil in a square. If you had a Swanson square, you could slide it up next to these horses and get a line on the bottom of that horse where this plywood's going to act, but we don't have that here. So we're just going to grab the ruler tool, and by clicking on an edge, it'll create a guideline, and I can make it go up and down or any direction, but I want it to go in the green direction, and I want it to stop on the face of this leg. And because the leg doesn't intersect right here, the program can't quite tell what I'm trying to get to. So I'm just going to pull it this way, get it going in the green direction, hold down the shift key, which locks that axis direction, and then I'm just going to hover over a point that I know. I can just pick this point and boom, it sticks that. I just pressed escape to get rid of that unwanted box. Space bar, it drops my tool. So it puts that guideline precisely where I want it. And it's across the bottom of the horses and across the face of this 2x4. And like I was saying, we want to make that, I want to make the gusset, you can make it anyone you want, but I want to make the gusset 6 inches tall. And so I'm just going to click this guideline now and then pull in the blue direction, type 6, enter, and now I have 2 parallel lines across the face of those legs. So now I can just trace this out by watching these little red X's for intersections. Boom, 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 boom. And once it creates a face, once you close that, then you have this new face. And by double clicking on this, I've got, this is just raw geometry. These lines are just raw geometry. They're not part of any groups or components, which is exactly what we want. because we're going to right click this and we're going to make this a group. And the guidelines are not part of that group, so we're just going to delete those. And sometimes you want the guidelines to be part of a group, sometimes you don't. You can just set it up that way. But we're going to double click to enter this group. And here again, back in group mode, we're not giving it a name or other attributes like you do with a component. It's just a group. And we're going to grab the board stretcher, which is one of my favorite tools. And I'm going to make this 3/4 of an inch thick by typing in 0.75 enter. And that makes this a nice little plywood gusset group. And I'll introduce you to one more thing here. Most of this I've just kept this simple and used just this blank geometry with no textures or colors or faces. That's a whole other thing to learn, but it's kind of fun, so I'll throw it in here for you to give you something to think about and look forward to. So we want to make this gusset look like plywood. So I clicked this little paint bucket tool, and it took my computer a second to come up with this materials dialog box. And we want to select this, and then this is the color selection. We want to click this little drop down arrow, and it gives you all the things you can select from, different materials. And we're just going to pull this bar down, and we're going to go to wood. And this typically what you get when you download SketchUp. I think you just get these 8 or 10 material patterns. You might get this other folder which has increased options. I kind of don't remember. The first version of SketchUp I got had a whole bunch of wood in it, and then when they went to having the materials and components in the cloud, so to speak, then these materials didn't come with the software anymore. So I'm not sure what you'll have when you just open your SketchUp. But in saying that, I'm just going to pick one of these very basic colors, and it happens that in the standard selection we have this plywood with knots. You can see in the description. So I'm just going to click that material. Actually, I have to hit a space bar because it's not clicking. So I'm going to click this material, and I selected that with a paint bucket, and I just put it on that grouped component. And that's kind of ugly looking plywood, I'm sorry. So let's go into the features a little bit here, and I'm going to go in and enter this group so that when I put the plywood on it only goes on one face instead of all the faces. Alright, and then I'm going to click this edit tab and then move these sliders to get that plywood to look a lot less pukey. Alright, and let's just move these around here till it looks a little bit more like plywood. Well, that's not too bad of a shade there. Let's orange it up a little bit. Depending on what part of the world, I like a nice fir plywood. Let me just mess around with these a little bit. Okay, so that's okay, but there's no detail. And so now I'm going to right click on this texture, click texture, and then select position, which opens up yet another screen. I'm scrolling out here. You can see these little push pins. The only one we're really concerned about here is this green push pin. And when I do that, it rotates the selection and it changes the size. So I'm just going to shrink this pattern down. I don't want it to be twisted. I'm just going to shrink it down some. And then click enter, and so we've edited that pattern. And now we want the whole plywood box we want it to look like a piece of plywood. So I'm going to right click this, and I'm going to do something else by going texture and then projected. So I'm saying I want this texture to be projected. So now I'll triple click on this, which selects everything within that group. Go back up here, click select, grab the little eyedropper, which the eyedropper won't function if you're in the edit mode. You can't get it. So go to the select mode, grab the eyedropper, and then click on this surface to pick up that projected texture, and then click on the other surfaces, and it will act as if this is being projected on here through it. So you can see the edges are streaked like it's projecting that texture. This looks more like a real board than plywood, but you can see how it stretches this knot across those surfaces rather than just pasting a new knot on the edge. But that makes a fairly realistic looking plywood gusset in my mind. You can go to great lengths and put plywood texture on the edge if that's what you're trying to accomplish with your model, but we're just trying to make a gusset, so I'm going to grab that gusset, and then we want to move it, and we want to move a copy of it to the other end of the sawhorse. So without my 3D mouse, I have to be looking at both ends of the sawhorses at the same time. So I'm going to pick it up by this corner of this gusset, hit Control, move it in the green direction. Once I've got that, then I can click a corner of this leg, and presto, we have a gusset on the other end, which completes our sawhorse. You can put this baby to work. Oh yeah, one more thing. Best part of all is if we select everything we drew, right click, make group, and you want to make enough sawhorses for the rest of your life, grab that sawhorse, hit Control. Let's move this 30 inches and hit Enter, and then 100x, Enter. Give your computer a second, and you made your first 100 sawhorses. Congratulations. You've completed the sawhorse. I hope that this tutorial has been helpful and maybe giving you some encouragement in getting into 3D modeling and an introduction of how to accomplish some things in here without getting frustrated. To sign out, I'm going to click on the Shadows tool, and it is currently the end of February and 2:30 in the afternoon. So I'm thinking that's time to call it a day. I hope that this will be a memorable introduction for carpenters to the world of 3D modeling using Trimble SketchUp. Thanks for watching. Stop by the Digital Jobsite for more tutorials on practical carpenter applications. Thanks for watching.